Time to look at the harvester a little, and as I hinted in the previous video with the forwarder, I suspected the fuel pump to be causing issues. I moved it a couple of times during the summer and started it, and it has died on me, suggesting it's not getting fuel. Looked at the old parts from the forwarder where a new 24-volt pump was installed.
Låt inte han... Nu snurrar han. Han står där i.
As you could hear, the electric pump feeding the diesel does not sound healthy, especially when compared to the quite new pump on the forwarder. I measured the voltage here and it seems to have a 12 volt feeding it. And this here is a spare pump that came with the forwarder. And if you follow the previous videos, I measured that one had a 24 volt feed to it. So I ordered a 24 volt pump from Komatsu. They only sell them complete with the filter housing and everything, and it's quite expensive. And since I had this 12 volt laying around, I figured I would try to reinstall that and take a shortcut and just remove the pump part and reuse the filter housing just because it's easier. But I've later learned that the harvester with the bigger engine might have a slightly bigger pump unit, so we'll see if that causes issues in the future. Had to bolt the filter housing part down because it took quite a bit of force to undo this coupling up here that holds the pump part in place. Once undone, it can be pulled out. Somehow it has a pin across the bottom here for some reason, so better be careful about that. Took apart the one that I know is broken also and double checked that it looked the same, and also took the best looking gasket out of them to reuse. A little hard to get any good video because you have all the wiring going to the electric junction box there and the filters are behind it, but with some big pliers it was possible to undo just the pump unit. A little bit of grease was used to kind of make it both easier to tighten the new pump in place and make sure the gasket stayed where it was supposed to be. Also ensure that that pin would not go where it or come undone while installing the used pump, and it could slide down there, and it was just a matter of tightening it back up and connecting the electric connection. The pump sounds a lot happier, so let's test, see if it starts. A little bit of cranking, but it was probably low on fuel in the diesel pump. With the fuel pump sorted out and it seems to fire as it should, a little puff of smoke, it's probably healthy smoke. It's time to start getting it to get ready. I had quite a bit of water inside the cab, started pouring down from like around the radio that's mounted above you and some stuff, so it collects water somewhere high up on the cabin. I don't like that. While it was moved closer to the garage, we checked that all of the lights seemed to function. The oil level on the gearbox for turning the upper structure was checked while the machine was up and running. It's a little hard to check otherwise. Now you can lean the cab side to side and ensure that you have good oil level in there. Harvester head was brought under a roof, so that can be worked on cleaning that up even if the weather is bad. Up on the roof, this hinge joint here, it does not have a seal whatsoever. It relies on a list, an angled metal plate underneath that kind of diverts water out to the sides, but when leaves build up and some moss grows, that might be a way that water collects up high on the cab, so going to look at that. Underneath on the backside, you need kind of a key thing to open it up, the lock there, and you can open the lid on the cab. That's where you replace the air filters. They look a bit dark. I'm gonna look at doing quite a big service on both machines next summer if they are behaving well this winter. Here is the angle plate that is supposed to divert water out to the sides, and it's quite full of stuff, and further down you have quite a bit of needles from the pine and spruce, mainly spruce needles I would guess. Had some foam material, but it's a little on the thin side to make a seal here, so I'm gonna do double layers. And we were out working in the dark, and it's really bad video footage here because here on the inside it started, but then it turned out to be easier to step out on the light bar on the front and kind of putting your fingers in from the other side, and it's mainly just pitch black, so that was done twice. So I put one strip on the lid side and one on the cab side, so for dual layer and actually clamping down on it. And on the back side where the lid falls down, and here you can see the lock for it, the hinge or the little lever that locks it in place. And I figured I've put some foam here also to stop water from getting in. Hopefully I will have less water inside the cab, because it was maybe not as bad as taking a shower, but too much water for comfort. And then it's best to lock the lid up. Hopefully that's the last time I have to be up here until next summer when it's time to replace the cabin filters. Time to open up some of the covers on the harvester head for some cleanup. I really need to do this in the spring after the season is over. Might not be want to do it in the middle of the winter, but before it's parked for the summer, because quite a lot of water were coming out of this, and there is quite a big build up in here, and it has probably held some water. That's unnecessary. It has been worse. It's not the worst I've seen, but there's quite a lot under the hydraulic motor driving the saw chain also. And lifting off the big cover also. There might be a tiny oil leak somewhere in there, but it's so small I'm not gonna bother with chasing it right now. We'll see how if it drinks a lot of oil as we start working with it. We need to search for it. Some luggage straps to lift the hydraulic hoses up, because the hydraulic or this oil tank for the saw bar oil is back there. It needs to be tilted up. And once again, very poor video footage. But with that out of the way, I started working with the just compressed air, trying to get out a lot of the build-up in there. And under the hydraulic motor for the saw bar, there is quite a lot. This is just the beginning, and towards the end the pile has grown considerably. I think I might have some oil on the lens by now, giving this hazy effect on the video. And once I was happy with the cleanup, I just used compressed air, no brake clean or anything. Tried to remove a lot of the twigs and sticks that were stuck in there. It was just a matter of bolting it back up. Filled some oil in the tank for the saw bar. It was kind of low, and I had a little left in the jug. I need another one of these to manage what I have set out to log this winter. The saw bar was removed and the oil channels were cleaned. It can be quite kind of coagulated or kind of stiff to remove the build-up once it's been sitting for a while, and there is a little hole there that can easily be plugged and you don't get the oil where it's supposed to be. So that was all cleaned. And I know I have a small leak on the front differential. It leaks out through the axle shafts into the brake housings. So after a season I've lost a couple of liters. We needed to fill like a little more than 1.5 liters in here before the level was good, and the video footage was poor, but that's expected since I know about the problem, but I'm not gonna do about anything about it until it gets worse. Getting close to bringing it out into the forest. The diesel heater was started. It wasn't really needed, but I wanted to make sure it works. I removed this inspection hole or access hole under the front end of the machine because I've had quite a bit of water buildup in here, and one winter we had to open it for something I can't remember, but we had a lot of ice in there, and I want to avoid that, so I'm going to remove this cover while it's driven out to location and reinstall it later. Coolant was a little bit low, so a couple of liters was added. We'll need to keep track of that. I don't think it's a big leak, but I don't think it has evaporated that much. I did replace the help pump that pumps the water up to the cabin roof, and that I know the old one was leaking a tiny bit, and I'm unsure how well the level was topped up after that, or maybe there was some air pocket that worked its way out. That's the reason for the level being a tiny bit low, but I'll be on the lookout for the level, and there should be an alarm going off if it gets too low. Ended up having to replace the belts for the generators last winter. If you've seen the previous videos, check the tensions on them now that they're a bit broken in, and they were a little on the loose side, so they were all tightened up. Had noticed a tiny bit of damage to the delimbing knives, so the harvester head was put upright and secured with a pin at the top. Some gentle grinding to fix the damaged spots. Did run the manual lubrication for the saw bar for a little bit until we could see oil coming out, just to ensure that seemed to work as it should. And while I was starting to go out on the field, I made sure to reset the volumes and start a new production area for this winter. Every measurement is set to 0 regarding volume and production. Once the harvester was in the location where it's gonna take care of some windfallen trees, we went over to get the forwarder and the cultivator. You can see in the background the area that is ready for planting, and well, some of the areas here I'm gonna just put a few plants and rely on the pines you see in the background for seeds. If you look to the left there, you can see it's not cultivated, but it's so steep, even if it's not really looking that bad from where the camera is looking. But I'm not gonna need to bring an excavator there and make some planting points. I'm not gonna mess around with using the forwarder in that steep gradient, and well, it would require going up and down it all the time and only going down, and it would have been very hard to make it efficient in a good way. But it got some lubrication. The steel wheels were lifted up using a luggage or lifting sling, and hooking up the chains again. We might need to look at doing something better for this, but it's good to get the chains out of the way so that they don't interfere with anything while it's operating. It was brought out onto the road. The crane has not really been used now while it's been dragging the cultivator behind it, but we checked on the levels in the bogies because one was a little low and there had been a leak. The one I greased earlier don't seem to have to be leaking anymore, so some more grease might have sealed it up for now. I also greased the bearings for the bogie because it has been traveling for quite a bit now, cultivating. And while my dad was traveling with the forwarder, getting to the next area that the cultivator will go over, I went back and tried to tackle some windfallen trees before he made it there. This tree is actually a couple of meters into the area that was planted this spring, but the pine looked kind of good, so I wanted to rescue that. I tried to avoid hitting the plants, and the ones I could see, they looked quite good. That's nice. I thought it would lift it up and lift the root of it up, but I struggled a little and I actually pushed the wrong buttons a little. It's been a while since I operated this machine, but I think I'll get back to knowing what buttons to push quite quickly. I've got quite a few hours in the machine by now, even if the volume is low compared to the professionals. And I also use the machine a little for things like this, that it's not a lot of volume for each hour of operation. So, but if you have the unit, it's better to do it like this than break your back with the chainsaw. It had to go here anyway because there are too many of them. Sure, it could have been done with the chainsaw, but it would have taken a lot of time, and you always have risks with windfallen trees. So rather than mess around with that, you bring in the big guns if you have access to them. And this one I carried with me out, so the forward wouldn't have to go up here and collect it, since this area, as I said, is planted. Once it was carried outside to a good spot for the forwarder to pick it up, it was processed. I will need to do some control logs and ensure that it measures well, but I don't really care about these windfallen ones, and sadly they have caught a little of the bluing. There is a little of blue stuff in some of the cuts on the pine that have been laying here, so it might end up all going for pulp that are taken care of here, sadly, but what are you gonna do? It's better than nothing, and they need to go anyway to not be in the way for the cultivation. And most of the stuff, when I do things like this, I don't use the working RPM. I put it in neutral and adjust the throttle with my pedal rather than messing around with having it on high RPMs, because here it's gonna be slow moving anyway. And to make it easier on the forwarder, some of them were moved. He's gonna do a perimeter sweep going all the way around the first turn, going around the area at first, and I drag all the logs out so he can collect everything that's in the way on that first one, and then put it remove it. He doesn't have to carry it with him all the time, and it's better to fold the crane in on the forwarder when doing the cultivation, I think, rather than having it stand upright and maybe swaying back and forth. So part of the reason. Even if it's a little more work for the harvester, I think it's worth it because it's less work for the forwarder or easier for him. So I try to make things as efficient as I can, but maybe sometimes my thoughts and ideas are not the best, but I try. I know it might be hard to tell from the video, but this pine here has the blue marks at the bottom that is common that they get if it's from some fungi that attacks them, and when they have been laying down they tend to get it, or if you have in the summer, if you have it laying out for too long, they start getting these blue marks. I tried making a short log here and setting that off as pulp wood, but I think it still has too much of this blue marking at the next cut, so that one is probably all gonna end up in pulp. I will look at them better once they are next to the road and make a call if we're gonna try to pass it off as timber, or and it's still too early in the season to be sure that it can lay outside for a longer period of time. Once it gets cold enough, this problem doesn't arise. So, but we will need to start seeing freezing temperatures. Well, that's it for now. This area got cleaned up for the cultivator and it's been cultivated by now, and the machines are parked out here. There are a few more windfallen trees in the area here that needs to be addressed, and after that I have not seen a whole lot of windfallen trees, but we did have some quite strong winds not too long ago, so I need to get the drone out and kind of survey the property and see if there are any surprises. I know of a few trees here and there, but nothing big, nothing that I need to focus my attention on right away. I will, depending on what I manage to do this winter, I will start with some clear cutting as it seems, and hopefully that goes well and I can chase a few windfallen trees at the end of the season, hopefully before it's too much snow. Well, turned out to be a quite long video. Hope someone finds it interesting and it helps someone out. Have a good day. If you have any questions, don't hesitate to comment. I will try to reply. Goodbye.